with another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Good morning, Sal.
How we doing?
Doing great. Hey, we have a guest with us today, joining virtually, and we always say special guest. She's a rare guest because she's also a fan of the podcast, so we don't see many of those or talk to many of those. But today we were joined by Sarah Beth Aubrey, CEO and owner of Elevate Ag. And the topic of our conversation today will be a special project that she's a founder of that she is named In Climate. And so we want to dig into that. We want to dig into your background first, and then we want to talk about In Climate and maybe discuss a lot of the terminology and where this climate thing's going, because it's met with such divisiveness amongst groups. So we want to get into that. But prior to doing so, Sarah Beth, we want to just have you give us a little background and for sure welcome you here. We're glad you've decided to join us today.
Good morning, gentlemen. Sal, Ryan, thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. Yes, I am a fan of your podcast, so we intend to take the fan base up a notch. You guys are really doing a great job with this show, and I enjoy listening to it. It's great to have a dialogue in our sector, in this ag retail sector, and the customers and that we touch on both sides of that. So it's enjoyable to be on, and it's really good to have this conversation. And yeah, I think today with the topic of In Climate, we'll have a pretty fun chat. In our pre-conversation, we spent some time trying to figure out where do we go with this topic that's so wide open, so confusing, and really pretty new for most of us in agriculture. But I think we agree that it's something we really need to we need to stake our claim and make our positions known. So I look forward to the dialogue. So a little background about me. I grew up on a grain and livestock farm, Central Illinois, went to U of I, got my master's at Purdue. And, I see you there, Sal, in the booth there. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a farm broadcaster when I went to college. But then I found out they only made like $20,000 a year, and they had to get up at 3 a.m.
Actually, Sarah Beth, we make less than that. I didn't know that was a starting point.
Thank goodness we found out what to barter for. Thank you. I appreciate that.
We need to ask Harold
we got these cool cups.
I very much love those. I really do like those cups. And I noticed the sweatshirts in the back. I mean, this is a real show. So
back to your you thought you'd be a farm broadcaster. Sorry for that.
No, I did. I loved the idea of bringing information to agriculture. I mean, I thought I wanted to be on TV, but I really think that's what I wanted to do. And that's not where I went. I really went more into public relations and then into consulting. And I've owned a consulting practice for 18 years. Like Ryan said, we call it Elevate Ag. And I feel like I've always tried to work, where does ag need me to go? And so certain things I've done, built a lot of peer-to-peer networks, both with big companies and their work teams and with growers, a constituent that all of us serve and know really well. Done a lot of things like sales training, executive coaching, and today spend a lot of my time building out what I call coalitions and alliances, areas where we need to build productive conversation or solve a problem where there's consternation. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So enjoy that, and also have a small farm here in central Indiana with my husband, Carrie.
I think it's pretty neat. You talk about building coalitions, and I guess the word commonality come to my mind, because when we get into a climate discussion, I mean, no one's more vested. I guess we're all vested, but I guess agriculture is completely invested in climate. And I don't know how we get different sides. It's like they're yelling at each other for no reason.
Oh gosh, Sal, I feel like one of my goals with this In Climate organization and project that we're into is to take those words back. How did those words, climate, environment, sustainability, get hijacked and supposedly in the common vernacular today, or the cultural broad viewpoint of today, become a one-sided or a certain political side? And I don't think that's productive. I also don't think it's fair. Like you said, these are critical aspects of the production system. We understand the climate. We understand the environment. We care about that. We got to start talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what a job would be like where you don't worry about what the weather is. And, we're in the ag industry, and if there's a rain, I mean, that is the topic of discussion. if it's hot, that's a topic of discussion. The weather is that we're so in tune to what the local climate and what the weather is and what the forecast is. And I think, Sarah Beth, the way you that makes me think that people are starting to use words as clubs. That's almost how they weaponized different words to beat each other up with. And that'll be interesting. And you had an experience. What did you say that you had a meeting and then this kind of hit you, right? You kind of had a revelation about where ag was going to take you next.
It really did. As we started to see some of the shifts coming, and again, a lot of this dialogue getting the point of view of one way or the other. And then I also really started to see in our agriculture industry, and I want to include energy in that too, because our group in climate represents both the ag and energy sectors and that common customer we serve in our supply chain, much like obviously you folks do at Premier. And I was really beginning to see that we were almost hushed about talking about it. You bring up the word climate and people are either going to really get in your business and want to have a real point of view, or they're going to run the other direction like you're seeing the Baptists at the liquor store.
You're right. That is, what did you say? They either or run the other way. They either start the fight or run the other way. So
get fired up or they run the other way. And I'm like, this is a word that describes the environment, people. Come on, let's get in the game. Let's have a practical dialogue. Let's not be so ridiculous. And that was noodling around in my head. And then after some of the legislative things and some legislation came out, frankly, about a year and a half ago now, some peers in the Indiana agribusiness sector, some other leaders of organizations, and we were talking, how you do, and chewing on it. And of course, the thing happened that always happens. It starts a movement, and it was somebody should do something. And I don't know what happened to me, but the group was looking around the room going, well, Sarah, you don't really have a job. I mean, you're a consultant. You've been you work for yourself this whole time. We represent these organizations and we got a lot to do. Why don't you start this? And so I took on the challenge, and I've had several of those groups step up with me in this, and we're just expanding every day. We've actually got our first summit coming up in August. But the original idea was we have to. A good friend of mine is the one who's credited with this quote, and someone you both know well. And she said, hey, we're involved because we're afraid ag's going to be silent on an issue that we can't be silent on. And that's where we got started.
Good.
Very good. So when we talk about getting started, I mean, there is so much confusion on obviously any fees that there might be involved with payoffs. We know that there's money being there's money exchanging hands. There's all of this discussion, and our customers, a lot of them would rather just sit with their arms crossed and say, I'm not partaking in that, or I'm upset about because they don't recognize my practices, which my practices work better for me, and I'm not getting recognized for what I'm doing. So tell us a little bit about how you're starting to organize that, and what kind of questions. I know you said that teaching data verification tracking data verification and authentication are things that you're digging into with this. So walk us through your process, your thought process of how do we get these people all together and on the same page?
Well, I haven't quite figured it out yet, Ryan. So we're definitely in the process, and it's that messy middle, but we feel like you got to take it on and you've got to just start working on it. And so a couple of things come to mind. One, let's talk about the grower thing first, and then we'll talk about maybe with us as leaders in the supply chain, as business people that support our customers, the grower. So with regard to growers, there are a lot of opportunities, right? And you folks at Premier are doing a bunch with things like the carbon markets. You've got quite a few customers taking a look at that, probably quite a few, and just as many turning their nose up at it. And with what we're doing within climate, we're not saying you need to do this. We're not saying you need to sign up for this. We're not saying you need to change practice. We are saying this is an opportunity for those of you who want to take a look. It could make a lot of sense right away. And for those of you who aren't sure or rightfully so, a little disappointed that some of the programs out there don't let you participate at an active level because you've already been doing practices, that's frustrating, Ryan. I mean, and I understand that. And I think that the companies that buy and sell those programs that we call carbon credits, I believe they'll begin to recognize those and there'll be solutions to that. I'm not sure what they are today. But the thing that we really want to advocate for here is, hey, you can't miss out on knowing what's coming. I mean, just think back when ag tech started. There were the early adopters and those that weren't. One of my first consulting projects was with Roundup Ready. I was work for a firm called Adiana, and Roundup Ready was coming out, and I was new. And they sent me out to go interview ag retailers, good old fertilizer guys and branch managers, and ask them, hey, do you guys want to convert to Roundup Ready? Well, you can imagine they didn't. And it was new, and they didn't want to change practices, and they didn't want to follow a protocol from a company. So, of course, the rookie got the crummy job there to have to be the messenger. But it's like that here, too. I kind of have to say, we have to examine what's new. And in an ag, in order to be sustainable business people, we've got to be, as professionals, if I could go to that, we've got to be prepared and positioned to have a dialogue with our customers. We need to know enough to give them the information and support their decision making. I mean, that's what you guys do in this segment. We're partners with our customer, and we provide them advising. So if we don't educate ourselves, if we don't say, here's what I know, here's what I like about it, here's what I don't like, here's the opportunities, and here's the challenges, we're not doing our jobs. I mean, it's just that simple.
When we started, the carbon market first came around here, and I guess last year was the first year when the transactions started happening, and one thing that we kind of decided early on, and I think it was Braden Carpenter, who manages our sustainability for Premier Ag. He said, you know what, we're not going to be mad at the money, and if folks have in their heart that, or in their business plan, that they want to offset either some part of their production or their business or their personal lives, and use agriculture to offset their carbon emissions, we're not going to be mad at the money. And I think that's that brings us closer to the consumer, which is a good thing.
It is, and it's a role that we're increasingly having to play. For many sectors of agriculture, particularly livestock, they've been closer to the consumer for a while. They've had to make sustainability plans, whether they wanted to or not. The grocer, the processor, the restaurant, has dictated that, and they've worked through some of that. In the row crop sector, frankly, we're the last holdout on that particular that relationship. And you're right, the carbon market, if we're going to specifically talk about that today, of course, it's just one aspect of the broad climate subject, but it's one for today's chat. That does bring us a lot closer, and it gives us a chance to engage that customer and consumer in a different conversation. They're not, they may read a lot and see a lot on TV and hear a lot of cultural forces pushing a message, but they don't have the message right either. And what if we take that message back and start, talking about it more accurately?
Well, we should, as we evolve, as not only taking this message to our customers, but we should be talking both ways, obviously, with our end users and the producers, and say, an offer to come out and let's show you what we do. Let's get out here and see this firsthand. Get on this farm and see the things that we are doing that checks these boxes that everyone deems so important that nobody's really talking about. And that's I think we could do that today. I mean, that is not a thing that's going to take months and years of preparation for. Farmers are the original conservationists, and these are things that they do daily that you could throw somebody in a vehicle and take them to a farm today and find out that a lot of these things are already forefront of mind for our producers.
Ryan, that
they are.
And Sarah Beth, one thing that in our Premier Ag Sustain, in our sustainability part of Premier Ag, we say that we just had Joe Zimmerman from our Trax CropLink we'll have him on here with a podcast. But one thing that we say about our Precision Ag department is that is how we farm, with Precision Ag. And then Premier Ag Sustain is how we show we farm. And I think that's what consumers want to know. They're curious. And it's interesting you said that row crop farming, which is corn, soybeans, wheat, row crop farming is the last holdout. And I don't think that's a matter of anything more than it's just such big volume. And, you know, a lot of times we're not talking about an individual animal. We're talking about just millions and millions of bushels of grain. And it's fairly easy, like Ryan said, that we've got the data now. You know, we can show how we farm today, but it's just a matter of getting that in a usable format that people can get the insights and the information out of it that they're looking for.
That's right. And it is, I love that. This is how we farm. This is how we show how we farm. This spring, I've started attending a lot more sustainability events, and I even went to a global food and ag summit in June where I spoke, and that was fascinating. I reminded myself that not everyone, even those in agriculture, especially globally, understand what we do, why we do it, and we differ greatly. And that was a very wide opening experience for my eyes to just be asked questions about and be called a Yank. That was fun. You know, what do you Yanks do? You know, that just cracked me up.
Colonists.
Yeah, it was funny.
Exactly.
But what are you Yanks doing about this? And these folks just ask and ask and ask a variety of questions. And then I heard something I would like to reference here. One of the speakers was from a global bank, and not an ag bank, but a global bank, and she was their sustainability director. And I won't mention it, but most of you probably have a credit card that this bank has sponsored. You've all heard of it. And
not to chase the subject around, but
yeah,
sorry.
So this is what I'm saying about this: how we don't talk about what we don't show what we do. She was like, you know, I don't even eat meat, but I'm here at this conference and in ag, and you know, I have to tell you, you folks are really doing a lot more than I realized, and it's not widely known. And that just hit me so hard, Sal and Ryan, because I thought that is our fault. And we are very busy, and we hate to add the role of advocate, you know, and I get that. It's like, why do we have to be advocates? We just want to do a good job for our community, our family, our industry. And sometimes it feels like a burden to add that. I mean, I hear that sometimes from growers, or they just feel like it's you know, can't I just be left alone to do my good stuff out here? And I get that too. But I hope that's what we do, folks like yourselves with the program or with our group like In Climate. Let us do some of that for you, so that we're, you know, there's a vehicle for us to speak up about what we're doing correctly in the sustainability space.
Sarah Beth, how much of this burden from this advocacy that farmers see, this burden, how much of that really equates to the fact that it's more of a privacy thing, that you know, they don't want to share that necessarily. It may be a burden, and they look at it like that, but a lot of that is just the protection of their information.
You know, you're so right. And part of that's ingrained in our culture, how we were all raised, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but, you know, when you talked to your dad when you were a kid and you asked him you asked the question, how much do you make? You know, well, that's none of your business. You know, we're very private in ag. That is a part of our legacy and our culture. That's changing, but it's also a competitive industry. And so privacy of our data and our information is critical. So we can't discount that. And I think that's something that we won't solve with ag data today, but that is part of this system, right? That collecting and verifying data about your operation is what earns you those carbon credits, if we're going to talk about that. The privacy of it, it's a significant issue that it's important that we manage and maintain, and it's part of the difficulty and for some operations to get involved in a program like this.
Yeah, funny story. You were talking about how much do you make. I brought my daughter that made me chuckle. I brought my daughter to work when she was younger. She's 11 now, and I brought her to work when she was probably about 5 or 6 or 7. And she was in there coloring in one of the meeting rooms, and it was, we got the day kind of done, and we left, and she goes, "You didn't get paid." And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "You didn't get any money. Why did you go to work?" And I'm like, well, it doesn't work like that. And I tried to explain the direct deposits and stuff like that. And, but it is funny whenever people are just curious, and we take things, use that example to say how we think about being private, but people growing crops it's not something that we need to be so territorial around that we can't show the process. And it's There's no trick to it. I mean, there's a lot. It's complicated, certainly, but it's just a part of the food chain, and we should treat it like that critical foundation that it is.
We certainly are. And I want to go back, Ryan. You asked me about how to get started in sustainability, and we talked about the farmer first, which we've been dialoguing on for a few minutes. I think it might be a good point to mention that as we look to part of that is how do we get that privacy issue out of our growers' mind, and part of that's our responsibility, I think, as their supply chain suppliers and partners. We need to be comfortable talking with them about what the opportunities are in the market and what the challenges are, and frankly, what our goals are as industry leaders. One of the reasons we started in climate was because the industry folks weren't sure what to do. They were thinking, if I say the word climate to my farmers, they're not going to join my organization anymore. They're not going to pay their dues anymore. They're going to go down they were very uncomfortable with the language. And that's probably one of the places to start is, have you worked, with your team internally as business unit leaders? Where are we at with this topic? And Sal, in our prep, you mentioned a blog I did called Words We Use.
Yeah.
And I think we have to start internally with our own leadership teams to say, where are we with this language? What are we comfortable using? What are we not? And that's one of the places that we start, because we can't accurately address things with our customers and help them through the issues if we've got the same problem.
Yeah, there's a stigma to some of these words, and that obviously you get lumped in with a group if you talk about them, and so it causes apprehension, and people won't talk about things they're not comfortable with, and education removes that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about just how do we learn more about what you're doing? I mean, you have a lot of information out there available. How do people get to that? How do people start to educate themselves with what you're doing?
Okay, wonderful. Well, we've got a website that's a good place, inclimateconversations.com. You can go there, and of course those places, we've got the typical social media that we do and try to keep top of mind going. But probably the most critical way right now is to come join us. We have a summit coming up, and at a place that everybody in Indiana and the Midwest knows, and that's the Beck Agricultural Center up at West Lafayette. And it's August 23rd. So Ryan, I know you've committed to joining. I appreciate that you'll be there. And, growers, business leaders in the ag and energy space, get to that event, I guess, is my plea, because we're going to talk. I mean, we went there today a little bit on the politics and the religion, Sal, and we're going to go there at that event. It's a day-long deal. It's 9 to 4. We do have a ticket price. You can check that out there. And the idea behind that is to talk about subjects that we need information on and we want to hear about, whether we like them or not. And we've got True Terra. President Jason Weller is going to be our keynote to just kind of open the door. What's the state of the carbon market right now? What on earth does this look like? He's going to give us a big global view. I'm really looking forward to that. We've got Winfield United coming as well. They're going to talk to us about just alternative income opportunities, what those look like. We've got farmer panels. We're going to talk green finance and the pros and cons of that. And we also, another area, here's the other one, we're bringing legislators in. We've got a legislative panel of 6 legislators from Indiana, and we're going to let them tell us what they think about this topic and where they see it going. So in the ESG, the SEC climate disclosure, I could go on, but like I said, the idea behind this event is it's really for everyone to just get that primer on what's going on in this broad area.
Yeah, and it's so important. I saw your agenda and the legislators that you have coming in. It's so important to get, because they don't know either, right? I mean, and if you look at the Indiana House and Senate, I think about a decade ago there was only 2 that were actually farmers involved directly in agriculture, and I'm not sure what the makeup is today, but and it's the same, I guess, for any industry. You've got a pretty limited range of knowledge of the legislators of the different topics and how the industries work. So it's so important to get them involved and get them educated too.
It is. And, I've had trade groups in the state tell me, I'm not ready to join in climate because I don't know how that word will play with our legislators. We don't want to ostracize ourselves. And I'm like, guys and gals, if you got to take the lead and open the conversation. So we just decided if that was an objection, we'd bring it right to the door. I mean, that's just sort of how we're operating in this. We don't want to be another trade group that sits around and pats each other on the back for all the things we already know, you know? And that happens sometimes in industries. We get comfortable and we complain and grouse about stuff, and we plus in each other and like everything on social media that we do well, but we don't expose ourselves to something that's tough. And this industry is going to be tough to figure out, this aspect, but we got to do it.
Agreed. We're glad somebody's taking the reins on it. So do you have anything you'd like to add before we wrap? We've given a nice overview, and would love to have you back. And again, we want to promote coming to your summit for sure. It looks like with the agenda, everybody should come out of there with some better understanding of maybe all aspects, or at least some aspects of what we got. So I'll open it up to you one more time to throw out anything that we didn't get covered that you want to talk about.
Oh gosh, we covered a lot today, and you know, I'm happy to be there. I mean, I guess the last thing I would leave you with is whenever you get involved with something that is it's got multiple sides, it can be uncomfortable to do. But with what we're doing, you know, agriculture is always at our core. We are pro agriculture. We are pro our industry. We're in this game to say, how is agriculture the solution? And that's actually the theme for our summit. Ag is the solution. And that's really what this is all about. You know, let's work collaboratively where we can. Let's learn about areas where we have discord, where it exists. And let's make sure that our industry is enabled and allowed to continue to thrive and prosper the way we need to do for the good of everybody involved. And it's a fun opportunity, and I'm glad I'm having the chance to do it. And it's been fun to chat with you gentlemen today as well.
Well said. Then thank you for taking the lead on this.
Yeah. And you made a comment that said, you know, early adopters and get involved. And if you don't like the rules, speak up and get involved in shaping the programs. And we're at that stage of this one. We're early enough that this is not all baked in. So certainly the things that you can speak about and the things that you don't like, get involved and talk about it and remove that stigma.
You are exactly right, Ryan. I love that. You know, there's some things that we accept that we don't like because they're so ingrained in the culture or in a system of regulations that it feels very stuck. The issue of climate and the ability for us in the agriculture and energy sectors to take that word back, to neutralize that word and say, this is what it is, and here's what's practical opportunity, and here's what's not. That door's still open, and we need to walk through it.
Outstanding. So, you got anything else?
I don't.
Okay. Well, we're going to wrap this up, Sarah Beth Aubrey, with Elevate Ag and in Climate. We invite everybody again on August 23rd at the Beck Center, West Lafayette, to come out, see the summit, and get involved. And don't stand on the sidelines. Actually, get on the field and let's play in this area and see where we can go with it. Sarah Beth, thank you so much for being a guest with us, and we hope to have you back.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, this is another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies.